All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I'd like to call this Transportation Committee to order. This is the special call Transportation Committee meeting as of March 2nd, 2018. We have one agenda item here today, which I'm going to go over it briefly. First, I want to do a couple of introductions. Catty-corner to me, beyond me being Kelly Robinson, Vice Chairman of the Board of Commissioners and Chairman of this committee, I have my esteemed colleague, the distinguished gentleman from District 3, the Honorable Michael Mulcair, our senior statesman on the Board of Commissioners. To my right, I've got Mr. Bart Till. He's the county administrator who runs the day-to-day operations of the actual county. Across from me, I have Miguel Valentin, who's the director of transportation. Bill Peacock is our director of transportation this year. No, director of purchasing is here. I've got Gary Watson, who's our director of multimodal transportation. Tiffany Stewart Stanley is supposed to be here with us regarding responsible for our external affairs, and Rick Martin responsible for our director of communications. Is there anybody else? I think that's
Ms. Jovine.
I'm here.
No, you too far, Jovine. You need to be down here.
Well, I gotta operate the Mondo pad if I can.
Okay,
so.
all right, I'll give you that. Jovine Milligan, she's our chairman's executive assistant. She's the secretary of this committee. Anything else? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is a special call transportation committee meeting. This is not though it's a public meeting, it is not an opportunity for input for the public. We have a special one agenda item. The intent here is to have presentations from 3 firms that made the short list for being awarded a contract for branding and marketing, and what we want to call public engagement for our bus system. I want to keep it simple. This is not to be a semantic or insensitive moment right here. This is the business of the people, and we want to make sure we get adequate understanding of who can represent us going forward. Up until this point, there's been one round of final formal submissions. There were 5 firms that were actually submitted an RFQ. Out of that, the committee here evaluated them and came up with a short list. And there's 3 firms that are here that made the short list. These were technical, basic capability papers that were submitted to us on how they would approach different nuances associated with taking on this scope of work. That being said, we got to stick to a time frame where we've got, according to my schedule, we've got one firm that will begin at 10:15, the next one at 11 o'clock, and the last one at 11:45. Did I get that? Okay, we got that accurate. And so we're going to bring each firm in. They'll have 30 minutes, both for presentation and Q&A, and then, of course, the committee will have a 15-minute recess between that. We'll go into the next one, which has a 30 minutes, 15-minute presentation, Q&A, etc. We'll continue that process. Are there any questions from the committee?
No.
Okay. Very well, okay? All right. Let me check my time. We got 1 minute, and we're going to start right on time. And Jovine, will you just keep my time clock? Yep. Yeah.
Mr. Vice Chair, the first company that's going to be presenting today is the collaborative firm. We have Mr. Michael Hightower, the managing partner, and I'll let him introduce his 2 associates.
Okay. Well, we're gonna. I'm old school. That means that doesn't mean that I'm old. It means that I always, commissioners, I always make sure that I have with me paper. And so sometimes the staff talks about me, Mr. Watson, but I don't mind being old school sometimes. Okay. Good morning, Michael Hightower, manager partner of the collaborative firm. I want to thank the committee for having us this morning to come before you. Very briefly, I want to introduce Amanda Clement to my left, and next to her is Danielle Crow, and they will be doing the bulk of the presentation. We will follow you have a document in front of you, which is always good for reliable. About the firm. The firm was started in 2001. We are based in East Point, Georgia. We are a diverse firm, but we're the largest minority planning firm in the southeastern United States. We represent cities, counties, state entities, as well as private sector developers. We are very familiar with Douglasville and Douglas County, having worked here before, and some of our staff lives here in the county. So we're very, very comfortable being here and welcome this opportunity to embrace the entire community. One of the things that you have on your first sheet is that we're very comfortable working in challenging environments and with diverse items. Danielle's going to talk about some of that during our presentation. As we talk about our firm, we are becoming go-to firm for tough situations. What I mean by that is that we get calls on challenging developments such as the Walmarts, landfills, etc. But Daniel's going to elaborate. So we are very comfortable in challenging situations, and we also bring out the best in those times. The bottom of your first page talks about some of the team members, of course. In addition to myself, Danielle is the project manager, assisted by Amanda Clement, and also Maurice Angero and Brittany Lindsay. So those are the team members. In addition to that, we also want to say we were very honored, Mr. Chair and Mr. Mark, as you know, to be involved with the Adult Detention Center. We were involved with that, with also community outreach, embracing the community, and also with some construction management. So we are very accustomed to challenging environments. So that was one of the things that we had as part of our plan. Also, I would add that as it relates to cities and counties, we have worked all around and in Douglas County, Cobb County, DeKalb County, Clayton County, most recently in Fulton County, when we led the biggest effort on outreach with the Fulton Transit study that just completed. You guys probably follow that. We teamed with two other firms, but we led all of the community outreach with that piece. So that's been one of our biggest fortes. So at this time, Danielle will come up now and kind of talk about some things that she wants to cover with some similar project experience. Then we'll go from there. But we are very excited. We feel it's the right time and the right place. And more importantly, Mr. Watson, in your RFQ, what you noted was a firm that could, first of all, do the branding and the logoing. But the real critical piece is embracing the community to move forward. So we can dot all of those I's and we can move forward. So saying that, I think we're going to keep going. Stand up. We need a few seconds. We're ready.
We're checking. I'm ready.
We'll keep going. We'll keep going.
Keep moving. Time to
Keep moving. We keep moving. Thanks for trying. We keep moving.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Contingency plans are always important, right? As Michael shared, the collaborative firm is known throughout the region for effectively engaging diverse communities. We convey complex issues in simple terms, allowing citizens to make informed decisions. And when skepticism arises or negative impact is perceived, we are the firm that can make the public engagement process smoother. We are highly skilled in providing opportunities to all stakeholders to find common ground and to co-create solutions with the decision makers and the elected officials. We ensure that all voices are heard, not only those that are most vocal. Working with people respectfully is a core strength of the collaborative firm, and it has been honed by years of leading some of the toughest public involvement initiatives within the region. For instance, the sigh of relief. Let's catch up here. Now you're so fancy, you're telling me how to advance it. Okay, I'm just gonna slide. All right, thank you. If you'll allow me to catch up, and you can see our team here. Michael's covered some of this. So as I was sharing, one of our core strengths is engaging with people and covering some of those tough issues. We've worked on some very difficult, what most people would have considered difficult or contentious public involvement campaigns, including Walmart rezonings. We led the public outreach efforts for the construction of 3 Walmarts in the Atlanta metro area. We were the primary contact for all stakeholders, HOAs, and other entities. On behalf of Fulton County Housing Authority, we led the visioning process and the community outreach for the redevelopment of several public housing communities. We have also led public involvement processes for landfills. So it's no misnomer when we say that we are the leaders in the region for tackling the tough issues and making sure that everyone is heard. Prior to our involvement in this DeKalb County project, the public forums were nothing short of contentious events. There was heckling over the elected officials and anyone who had a differing opinion. Once we became involved, we restored some respectful dialogue, which enabled all parties to find common ground, and ultimately the project received approval. So I think that's a testament to what the collaborative firm provides. In addition to all of this, our portfolio includes an array of transportation-related work. Many of which that are similar to the Douglas County Transit Multimodal Transportation Project, such as Fulton County T-Splots. We were recruited by the Georgia Transportation Alliance to provide community outreach in South Fulton for the T-Splots referendum. Fulton County Transit Master Plan, a large initiative that we've just wrapped up the bulk of that work. With Fulton County Transit Master Plan, we gained public input which would help to determine funding initiatives for future Fulton County transportation initiatives. We led stakeholder outreach, we coordinated public events. This is an example of some of the community kiosks that we've done. We know that you can't always host a public meeting and expect people to come, especially when it's something as interesting as transportation. Sometimes you have to go where they are, and that's an example of this. This is also an example of the interactive charrettes that we use by using strong visual colors and giving people the opportunity to give input without having to do a lot of speaking or a lot of writing, allows us to get more input. This is also an example of some of the tactics that we would incorporate if selected. So we would do these community kiosks at the Hydrangea Festival or downtown Main Street. Clayton County Comprehensive Transportation Plan. There again, we garnered public input for the countywide transportation needs and goals. We nearly tripled the public input that they received passed compared to their previous plan. And we did so by opting for an open house forum. This is very respectful of people's busy schedules because they don't have to sit through a very long presentation, and it allows them to drop in based upon their own time. It also gives the opportunity for one-on-one interaction, and we think that that's very key. In addition to that, we also did online surveys and other methods. But you'll see that there are just quick exercises with stickers that allow people to express their opinion, but it doesn't require them to speak publicly, which intimidates a lot of people, or do a whole lot of writing, which also dissuades some people from participating. We also coordinated public involvement for the DeKalb County Comprehensive Transportation Plan and the Cobb County Transit System operations. By and large, the collaborative firm understands the benefits of mobility on how it positively impacts communities and economic growth. So much so that many of the leading transportation firms seek us out to lead their public involvement efforts. So we've partnered with the likes of WSP, Kimley Horn, VHB, and others. So even when they are managing the actual transportation initiative, they contact us to do the outreach. Okay. Not only are we well versed in public outreach, but we've also completed significant branding strategies and designed creative concepts for a number of our clients, including the East Metro DeKalb, CID, and the Clayton County Transportation Plan. Of special note with this is a social media posting. We also incorporated some digital advertising, which was also very successful. So we implemented ads on Facebook and Instagram. That helped us reach a much wider audience, as well as provide metrics. Especially when we're dealing with government, we want to show them how we're spending their money. We also created a mission and visioning process for the Development Authority of Fulton County. And for Clayton County SPLOS, we developed their entire brand's logo and online presence, including this logo and this website. We also developed social media accounts for them and developed promotional videos. At this time, I'll turn it over to Amanda.
So we wanted to take the opportunity this morning to share with you our understanding of the project. And as we do understand that this project, the purpose of this project is to conduct a public awareness campaign on behalf of the county's Multimodal Transportation Services Division. We also understand that this is an important initiative as it was highlighted in the findings of the county's Transportation Services Study that was completed in 2016. One of the key findings being that the lack of awareness was one of the major impediments that's affecting ridership. This was further recognized by the study participants, wherein almost 80% identified that some type of public awareness to help promote and educate would help with understanding the services that are currently being provided by the county. We further understand, from looking at this study and also from past experience, that good advertising and education are an important component of any high-quality transportation system, which we understand the county is seeking to maintain. But in order to conduct a well-informed campaign, it's important for us to first understand the growing and changing needs of the county and its citizens. Some important factors pointing towards the need for transportation services within Douglas County are the projected population growth, which is expected to exceed 200,000 by the year 2040. The increase in the senior population, which past trends show that this sector of the population grew 38% between 2000 and 2010. And also recognizing and understanding that providing talented workers with access to jobs can assist the county in reaching its goals to remain economically competitive. So in helping the county achieve its goals through public awareness, we're going to approach three key elements. We'll first be creating, if chosen, creating a logo to recognize Connect with Douglas. Developing, implementing, and executing a strategic campaign that is designed to educate the public on the services that are already being offered by the county, to include rideshare, express bus service, carpools, and the voucher program. And also soliciting input and gathering feedback from citizens on the proposed fixed route bus service. In looking at the study that was completed in 2016 and for the new fixed routes, it's important for us to understand that the highest concentration of those that are most likely to rely on transportation services are located within the central and northeast portions of the county. This would represent districts 1, 2, 3, and a portion of District 4. Understanding that in connection with the proposed bus routes will be an important factor considered throughout this campaign as we gather input on the effectiveness of those proposed routes and their locations. Now, while there was support that was shown in the transportation services study by respondents for these fixed bus route services, our team is also acutely aware that there are some expressed reservations. We want you to know that we do hear these frustrations that are being raised about community safety and funding. And we also understand, though, that in order to execute an effective public awareness campaign, that we have to take into account these voiced concerns so that we can adequately develop materials and messages that not only educate and inform, but also help to address those concerns. Our
project approach begins with the assessment phase. Our plan is to meet with the Douglas County Multimodal Transportation Team to confirm the scope and deliverables. We want to obtain a shared understanding of the desired outcomes and then move forward. Next, we'll conduct work sessions with Douglas County city and community leadership. We'll also conduct brain strategy sessions with leaders in external affairs, communication, and community relations. While we are introducing new concepts for Connect Douglas, we need to ensure that they are in line with the county's overall communication plan. We also need to assess current public perception and current marketing efforts. This will include a benchmark for the Education and Public Awareness campaign. We'll evaluate the various fact sheets that exist currently for rideshare, the Blue Commute rideshare newsletter, fixed route fact sheet, as well as the policy guide and existing website. We will also evaluate community relationships, partnerships between the county and local businesses, and other things including messaging and online presence. With all of that information, we will then move forward with developing an integrated communications and outreach campaign. This campaign will have several goals: to create awareness, educating the public of the existing services, and to elicit support, potentially increasing ridership, because there is the opportunity that many of the people who need these services aren't aware of them. We will also gather input on the proposed routes. Next, we will design a Connect Douglas logo and define messages that communicate the benefits and availability of existing services. Not only will we incorporate these into print media, but we will also incorporate them onto digital and social media platforms. We will create an online presence that will include a website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Nextdoor, and utilize existing mediums as Douglas Happenings, DCTV, potentially even exploring perhaps Chairman Jones featuring Connect Douglas on the Clearly segment. Our outreach campaign will be customized for each district. We will tailor our outreach to each district and work closely with each commissioner to ensure that we are reaching their constituencies. In scenarios like this, we feel that it is best to have a more intimate gathering so that everyone feels comfortable expressing their opinion. It's human nature for people not to speak up when they feel like it might cause a conflict with their neighbor. So we've considered those things and are incorporating that into our plan. Lastly, we know that even when we break into those smaller groups, there are different audiences. There are people who are supporters, and there are those citizens who need more information to make an informed decision, as well as there are citizens who have expressed reservations. We need to make sure that all of those people are heard. And to do so, in addition to having those smaller gatherings, we will also implement the use of certain technologies that will allow for that, as well as attract millennials. We've utilized different things to do electronic polling, and some of those tools are MetroQuest and Fall Polling. So these are some of the things that we plan to incorporate into the plan. Next, Amanda will talk about execution.
So in executing this plan, we would be launching the Approved brand by incorporating materials into website and other promotional materials. Hosting community kiosks at various community events. Some that we've identified that might be helpful in this regard are the Main Street Douglasville, Penny McHenry Hydrangea Festival, the State of the County, and other events that are at or near Arbor Place Mall. And also commission district-specific community events and other engagement opportunities. Now, our project timeline shows that we are ready to start this project if selected. And we've worked through our approach and our execution and development to determine that we would be able to meet the county's specified 90-day time period.
I want to dispense by closing because I want to allow for some questions, but as Amanda was talking, one of your citizens is Tyler Perry in Douglas County. He owns about 800 acres in Douglas County. We were honored by the Georgia Planning Association because of the large outreach that we received at his Fort McPherson site. He's moving his studios to Fort McPherson Army Base. We led the public outreach for Tyler Perry's new location, and we were on it statewide because of our outreach. So I'll just say, let me take some questions. So that's what we do.
Thank you. All right, committee members, want to open up the floor for us to ask questions?
Contracts on this one, say, before we come up.
Yep. Commissioner Mulcair, I'll open the floor to you by courtesy, but anybody can go.
Sure, I defer.
Okay. Anybody else? Miguel, Gary?
Talk a little bit about some of the things that would go into determining the logo, the graphics.
Danielle?
I can. Okay. Thank you. Early on, I mentioned some of the assessment that we would do. Everything starts for us for research. We don't want to come with our own preconceived notions. We will have branding strategy sessions with those who are most knowledgeable about the services, and that's the transportation team, as well as those in communication and external affairs. We will bring to that process some knowledge about what we need to do to convey trust, efficiency. When you think about transit, you want those things, and mobility. All of those things would be incorporated into the Connect Douglas logo.
One of your slides, you mentioned that as part of the public outreach, you would try to elicit support for some of the routes, or do you view your role, if you're selected, to be one of advocacy or one of conveying information for others to digest and make decisions?
I'm sorry, if I may reiterate, when I was going through those, the illicit support is for existing services. Those are the primary focus for the education campaign. It's only the third component listed in the required deliverables is to gain input regarding the new services, not to create an advocacy campaign.
And that's a good question, because many of you were around, I think you were in Rockdale during the 2012 T-SWAS campaign. We were involved with the Metro Chamber working throughout the region on that, and we were involved, on the education piece, and that was a separate wall from the advocacy piece. So we have been involved in these types of situations. 2012, throughout the region, 2016 in Fulton County. So we know there's a fine line, and also it also has implications, as you know, from Rockdale, as it relates to funding and governmental funds, et cetera. But very, very good.
I have a question. And it's probably two parts, but and I'll give context. Think about there's Fulton County, and you think about there's North and South Fulton County, two different worlds. You think about Douglas County, East and West, which are two different worlds, including if you add our character areas in the 4 districts. Very, very different character areas. What do you see your role as far as coming into an environment? How do you go back to your map? Your map showed a density to the east. But the county is 4 commission districts. What is your approach? This is
I want to let both of them touch on that.
It's this question. If you get this wrong, it's not a trick question.
Yes,
Get
sir.
it wrong. Because I'm going to ask everybody the same question. You got 4 character areas. The density is to the east. What is going to be your approach? Do you talk to the people that are just being affected? Or do you talk to people that are not being affected in the immediate area? We'll leave it at that.
Amanda, you go first, and then wrap up. Okay, Amanda, why don't you go first?
Well, I would say that whenever we're approaching something like this, we want to talk to everybody. I mean, this is something that doesn't just affect districts, although we do recognize the unique characteristics of each of these districts. We recognize that this is something that it is meant to serve the county as a whole. So whenever we're gathering input and whenever we're engaging in our outreach, we want to make sure that all are involved in the information that we're putting out and getting back.
Yes, I would like to speak to that, and I'd also respectfully like to qualify that, because there are several different deliverables, and for the second deliverable, which is the education component, that really touches everyone in the same way. These are existing services that already exist, that some people aren't aware of, but may be able to utilize. So it does impact everyone. The reason why we talked about tailoring our outreach is specifically for the third component, which we know, based upon our research, that there has been some documented reservations. We are aware, and Amanda pointed out, that it does impact District 4, but we know that that's mainly here, near Arbor Place Mall and the shopping districts. None of the proposed routes, based upon our research, extends into the board. So we understand how to deal with not in my backyard, but we also understand that everyone is expressing their concern, but it shows that they value where they live, and so we don't want to minimize people's concerns.
I'll conclude, Mr. Vice Chair, by saying this, and many of you have been in government for years. Amanda has been in government for several years, and so has Daniel has worked alongside government. One of the things that we do with our firm, and why we've been successful, we don't personalize issues. When people are upset, they're not mad at us. They're mad because of either miscommunication or perceptions. So one of the rules that we have with our firm, we've been so successful, is that we first attack it by listening. Folks generally just want you to listen to what their views are, and there are different views. And we strongly believe in hearing all the views that we have to deal with. And so one of our rules is that don't make it personal, and as long as it doesn't cross a certain line, listen. Keep it in. Move forward.
Got one more question, you guys don't mind? We got, okay, and we've got a couple more minutes. And you're right, thank you for constantly reiterating that there are different deliverables here, but I also think you feel the weight of maybe one, to that point. This does have a budget associated with it, so I would be remiss as chairman of the finance committee to not, bring that to the forefront as well. Being able to fulfill those, fulfill the objectives here within the budget. Can you give us an idea? We're not looking for actual dollar amounts, but can you, like, if you've got a budget, you've got 3 deliverables, how do you weight what where the emphasis of resources are? How do we measure that coming back? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yes, sir. We would first, back to the chart, chart about Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, one of what we do is in each project, we first make sure that we are in accordance with the RQ of the procurement document. And, that's important. Following that, we also determine we've attended meetings out there already. I was at the chairman's open house. We've been at 2 commission meetings. We sometimes when there's a night meet we are free, we go to a community meeting. Just listen. I appreciate how you guys handled that crowd the other night over here, Mr. Watson. You were very helpful with that crowd. So what we do, Mr. Chairman, we basically with RQ we put a weight in terms of the dollar amounts per task, but we also superimpose some common sense. We know that there are some parts of this county that we got to listen to and at least bring some type of closure as it relates to where we are. So if we have to superimpose a heavier weight for some of that in this process, we do that. So we follow this process as outlined with the hour and the budget thing up.
We got 1 minute. Guys, any more questions? You're not forcing it, but you okay?
I have sort of a comment more so than a question.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, the educational aspect regarding the bus service is extremely important, but I also want to emphasize that we really need to promote the services that we already have. As your staff has mentioned, that was one of the main focuses in the transportation services study, that we're severely lacking in public knowledge of the services that we already offer. So that's something that we really need to get hard.
Right, and I will say that the overall branding and taking all of those services under one umbrella of Connect Douglas is the right direction. We will, once we do that, incorporate all of that branding and look at both schedules, handbooks, policies, the full gamut of collateral materials, and ensure that they are reaching the people who are most likely to utilize those services, as well as those who may be potentials.
I'll just conclude, Mr. Chairman, by saying this. One of the matters that Danielle put on the screen, and you know this out of your way, I'm the director in the care of Kensington Road, Trade 5, good example. I was sitting in my office 6, 7 months ago, I got a call from 2 of the commissioners, said, Michael, you got time to talk to us? Someone else, and the answer is yes. They said, we need your help. We have a contingent situation, new stuff, second week on the job. So she got put into the fire along with our top guys, because there were people that were not even talking in the same room, neighbors yelling at each other. And we got a call unsolicited, can you help us out? And we're going to, I said, yes, we will, because the cabin is an ongoing client. We didn't say what is good. We said what you're working with, and we didn't make money, but it was a service to bring people together. And at the end of the day, the Cobb County Commission came to a consensus because of me putting her in the fire and another gentleman in the fire. But that's what it's all about. But we got a call because they know we do deal with tough situations. And we enjoy it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna close this out. Guys, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Collaborative Firm for being here. We're gonna stay on track.
And thank you, sir, for your help with the
Great job. Thank you.
Bill, will you ask?
Yes,
Were you
okay.
on it?
Okay.
All right.
If you would, get your,
In transition.
You gotta reach all the way up
Okay.
top.
Took me back to this.
Oh.
So we're gonna just wait until the next one comes in, right? Got to pause, right?
Somebody gets coffee or you go to
Yeah,
the
there's
restroom.
no discussion. Great. All right. So, come on. Okay. All right. Refresh. Commissioner, you okay?
good. Very good. I had noticed in the original submission that they have worked with several others of the same firms that will be presenting today. So there's always that opportunity to maybe bring a couple of them into the same project and let them do the portion that they're so well versed at, and let the other do the.
They bring in subcontractors that do
Right.
that all the time.
But I noticed that, again, that two of the ones that we have here
Right.
today have worked with the collaborative group.
And that is particularly true with comprehensive plan updates, where you have a technical side and you have an outreach component. They collaborate, so they would be handling the outreach versus the number crunching technical.
Now, did you work with them out in Rockdale County?
I've worked with them previously.
Here, when we start back at 11?
Yes. We're waiting on, Kimberly Horn is the next one.
Okay, I got a couple phone calls.
Okay.
Be back.
Russ would be glad to teach you how to use that. The next firm will be Kimberly Horn.
Kimberly, not Kimberly, Kimberly.
Kinley, I'm sorry. I keep saying Kimberly. Kimberly Horn. My
I
bad.
know it. No,
My
I
bad.
took your word for it. Okay.
How do you spell it?
Kinley.
Is it Kimberly Horn?
Uh-huh.
H-O-R-N?
Kimberly Dash one.
H-O-R-N or
Yeah.
Wait up there for them.
Here. We start at 11 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Oh, we're good. Yep. Too far away,
I was trying to hold the
Yeah, I know.
signs up for the time.
We're good.
I started doing, a part of Toastmasters, we have read like, like from like.
Yeah, there are factors. They're like a countdown clock, and they have it available.
I was trying to get the right chime too, that's why I moved to work it. What I chose was a little bit loud.
This way. I'll reserve your seats down here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mr. Martin here will try to activate your thumb drive. Oh, yes. Do you have a conference number?
I do.
I'm going to let you come right there.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Kimberly.
Start with 9 when you're dialing out. Now, start with 9. There it goes.
Welcome to the audio conferencing center. Please enter a conference ID followed by pound. Welcome to the audio conferencing center. Please enter a conference ID followed by pound. If you're the leader, please press star now. After the tone, please record your name and then press pound. You're now joining the meeting.
You guys have a couple of minutes to kind of get ready.
Oh, yeah. We'll watch it. Yeah.
No. Oh, I like, yeah, we're watching. We're starting about 3 minutes, so stay on our time schedule. Oh, I feel it. You're here. I'll get you out. Time. Back to the garden.
You need to be done by a certain time.
No, I'm fine.
You just don't want to be here.
I love being here.
So the tulips came up, but there's nothing on it. Just popping colors. Too cold, too hot.
I'm gonna go, I don't know.
Yeah, they're a cool,
Okay.
You may not be able
temperature
to-
too.
Okay.
Not a hot temperature, but a cool temperature blooming.
Okay.
In fact, we're going, we've got a group tomorrow, we're gonna meet at the Pumpkin Town Nature Preserve.
Okay.
Because it is covered up with jonquils, daffodils. It's just covered up, I mean, just thousands and thousands of them. And we're gonna go out there and mark where they are. So should we do any construction out there? We don't wanna run over them, plowed under, or even having stuff dumped on them.
Right.
You know, if you're moving dirt, so we need to know where they are. So we're gonna mark them out tomorrow. I have about 8 people there probably doing that.
Good idea. That's good.
Yeah, I just happen to know what it was on my yard, because I planted, I moved them from house to house, 3 houses.
I imagine 100 years ago, they just planted a few of them by the front door, that old home place, and now there's just thousands of them.
Oh, I know.
There's the rest of your team. And when you speak, we are recording this, so if you will stay at least in some point in this area on the podium. You don't have to stand in front of it, but at least, and she dictate that swipe.
It's touchscreen, I'm gonna undo the phone.
Sure, I will. You know, I say I will.
The white button. Yep. Hello, Mary.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary. We just wanted to make sure that you were on the call.
We'll be starting in just a moment.
Okay.
All right, so what we'll do, so you'll have your full time period. I'm gonna go ahead and do some introductions so you know your audience, and that, to be consistent with the other. I'm Kelly Robinson, Vice Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, the Chairman of this committee. To my right is the County Administrator, Mark Teal. Across there is my distinguished gentleman, Commissioner of the 3rd District, Commissioner Mulcair, Michael Mulcair. Bill Peacock, our Director of Purchasing, is, you've already met. Our Director of Transportation, Miguel Valentin, is here. Director of Multimodal Transportation, Gary Watson, is here. Rick Martin, who is our Director of Communications, is somewhere. Tiffany Stewart-Stanley is our Director of External Affairs, and Jovane Milligan is next to me, and she's the Secretary of this committee. Okay? All right. So, we can start anytime within a minute. It's on you. I mean, it's on you.
Let me introduce Mr. Rob Ross with the firm Kinley Horn. He is the project advisor and QC/QA reviewer that will be working on the project. Rob, if you'll introduce your other team members here, and then please begin your presentation.
All right, we've got Jessica Choi with Kinley Horn, Christina Pastor with Kinley Horn, and on the phone we have Mary Carlson. She's our proposed project manager for the project. She's in our Twin Cities office. And, wasn't able to fly down today, but is available on the phone.
Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So a little bit about Kinley Horn. Not everybody here knows about Kinley Horn. We're a national firm with a strong local presence. We have about 200 folks here in the Atlanta region in 3 different offices. We've got over 3,000 people nationwide. And we're built to serve our clients well. We have, the way we're structured internally is to allow us to access skill sets across the country very easily. So for example, we're bringing in Mary Carlson for this project. She brings a skill set that we think is very valuable. And we see, what's happening in the Atlanta region today is very exciting. The things that are happening with transit, we're taking transit to a level that it hasn't been. I think, and there's a mindset for transit that it's not for everybody, but there are places where it does work and where it can do a lot to help traffic congestion that we've got. And so there's a lot of changes, a lot of potential changes that are happening at the state level, and we're very excited to be part of helping make those changes what's right for each of the different local jurisdictions. So with that, I wanted to pass it over to Mary to kick us off on the presentation. Mary will be project manager, and she's going to run the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Jessica, if you can advance it to slide 2 so everybody can get a visual of who I am. Again, my name is Mary Carlson. I am based out of our St. Paul, Minnesota office. And thank you so much for having me on the phone today. I really appreciate you accommodating me in this way. We've assembled and brought to you a great team today. I am a transportation planner. I am also a civil engineer. And I was also Assistant Director of Route and System Planning up here in the Minneapolis and St. Paul area for the largest transit provider, Metro Transit. I am so excited to be partnered with Jessica and Rob and Christina. We bring you a deep bench of transportation planning knowledge, of transit operations knowledge, and of communications and marketing and branding. So I think we have pulled together an amazing team for you. To really make sure that we are helping you communicate and connect with your constituents, your residents, your businesses, communicate the mobility options that are available now and that you are introducing, and communicate how they will help and benefit your community. In addition to those of us who are here today in the room or me on the phone, on slide 3, we also show that we have Eric Bosman on our team. Eric was one of the leads on the Cobb Link branding effort that was done in Cobb County. We're also partnered with Chelsea Hendrickson, Justin Von Hanna, Jessica Lawless, and Beth Tucker. Chelsea Hendrickson also was a member of Metro Transit and one of the staff members there with me. So she and I really bring a very deep bench of that operational knowledge and that understanding of how this will work on a day-to-day basis. And we are partnered again with Justin and Jessica, who are specialists in marketing and branding. Justin and Jessica bring both a pragmatic and an analytical approach, making sure that we are connecting with people where they are at and in meaningful ways. But they also bring that really beautiful and visionary approach of helping to make sure that we can provide you with a brand that captures your identity and that communicates, again, those choices that you want to communicate to people about the mobility options available in Douglas County. And then coupled with that, we have Beth Tucker, who along with Jessica can be available to partner with you and with staff on engagement efforts and helping to communicate with the public in person or through social or online media. So how we're going to approach our presentation today is we are going to walk through sort of the 3 key areas of work that we understand that you are interested in. So focusing on the logo and the graphical elements of Connect Douglas, and then talking about specific techniques for engaging the public and doing that communication, and then finishing up with talking specifically about the online strategy and how you can engage with folks beyond in-person exchanges. So with that, Jessica, if you can advance to slide number 4. We will start out talking about Connect Douglas branding. How we approach this is by, first of all, looking at what is the current perception of Connect Douglas. We understand that this is a new brand that is coming out of the transportation options that's not the right title, but the transportation options study that you recently completed, that this is one of the key recommendations from the programming and management component of that study. What we want to do again is start out with assessing where is the understanding of that today, and how can we build on the Douglas County brand that exists today. So as I was talking with some of our graphic designers, some of the things that they mentioned were, the beautiful green that is clearly part of your local identity, and trying to capture that as part of our branding and part of the logo. Another thing that they talked about and noticed are the radiating gold lines or yellow lines. Really showing some of that leadership and trying to capture that and incorporate that into a logo and into that branding. But really what we want to accomplish through this branding, beyond a visually pleasing identity, is communicating what that brand promise is. And as we're understanding, based on the work that you've done already, and based on this RFP, you really are trying to communicate that there are choices available to residents and to employees and to businesses in Douglas County. But of course, that's something that we will need to confirm through this process. On the slide, we also have some examples of branding that we have helped clients produce. One example here is CobLink. As I mentioned, Eric Bosman was Killinghorn's project manager for that branding effort. Eric talked about, again, where they started that process with identifying what is the current understanding of Cobb, then it was CCT, of Cobb County Transit. Through that, they identified the key elements of the identity that the community wanted to elevate. And that is really that strong identity in Cobb County, that strong local identity, and then also that emphasis on linking residents and workers with Cobb County throughout the metro area and locally. And so that's how they ended up with Cobb Link. Jessica or Christina, would you like to talk through any of the other branding efforts on this slide?
Sure, I can. I'm currently managing the Connect Gwinnett. Oh, I'm sorry. Microphone. Sorry.
Yep.
So I am currently managing the Connect Gwinnett transit study, and so you can see while this was a plan logo development as opposed to an actual brand for the system, we did take the county through that process where we put together some different ideas, some color palettes, talked a lot about. And this was even prior to the county's new branding. So when, if we were to do that now, obviously incorporating the county's new brand would obviously be an important component. But we went through multiple iterations with the county to work through different ideas. What was the concept that we wanted to be able to communicate? What is it that the transit system needs to be doing? So it was an iterative process, and Jessica Lawless, who you saw on the screen previously, was the graphic designer that helped us to take the county through that process.
Great, thanks, Christina. Jessica, can you walk us through some of the ways that we implement branding?
Sure. So once we create your branding and Connect Douglas's branding, it's really important for us to carry that branding, that brand promise, all the way through to all the collateral, the materials that we create. And so here we put together some examples of things that we've created for other plans and other projects. Here you'll see these are actually leave behinds that are business cards that we've left at strategic locations like senior centers and libraries. People don't need an entire pamphlet information, but they need to be led to where they can find that information, the clearinghouse. We've designed bus wraps. You can see the bus wrap for Connect Gwinnett. We've also, this is actually a really great example. This is actually window clings that we can put on your windows or you can put on buses. We're making sure that all of the branding comes together and is collaborative, and making sure that we're not only targeting certain audiences, but making sure that everyone who wants and needs information has that information.
So one of the really important things that you heard Jessica talk about here is making sure that we are doing an analysis of every element where this brand may be used and anticipating that before you're into operations and before you're into implementation. And again, this is one of the areas where I really want to emphasize Jessica Lawless. She brings that analytical and that pragmatic approach to helping to think through every way that you may want to be using this visual identity and this brand promise as we support you in transitioning into the implementation.
And so when we talk about actually, going out to the public and raising public awareness about plans or transit services, what we really like to do is think about how the range of options that we can provide folks. We know that not everyone wants to come to a public meeting. We know that not everyone is going to go to a community event or the library or senior center, but we want to make sure that we're targeting a broad range of options. So here you'll see these are some of the community events that we've attended as a part of some planning efforts. The two on the side there, we actually got on Gwinnett County transit buses and toured the county where we met people at supermarkets and shopping centers, and we told them, hey, get on the bus, look what it's like, experience the service, experience the driver, making sure that people really understood what we were providing, the existing transit services that were there, and also kind of, making sure that we're listening to them and making sure that they understand what services that we're providing. Again, the brand promise that Mary just mentioned is really important. We really kind of continue these themes and these colors and the presence and the perception that we want to carry for our plans and our services throughout all of the products that we create.
Thanks, Jessica. So we create products. We create a brand. We work with you to create a brand and identity. We work with you to integrate that into the elements that you will carry forward into implementation. And then we work on that implementation piece. So on slides 7 and 8, we demonstrate some of the ways that we do that. On slide 8 in particular, again, I want to emphasize where we take those materials out and we meet people where they are. This is one of the things that Chelsea and I have deep experience in here based on our experience in Minneapolis and St. Paul. We were both with the transit agency as we opened up a new light rail line, and Chelsea actually was one of the planners who reconfigured all of the connecting bus routes connecting into that light rail line. The way that we did that was based in the community. We went out and we met with people to get ideas of how the bus routes should be restructured. And more applicable to what we're talking about today is that after we got through that planning process, then we went out and we helped people understand what was coming and helped people understand how their feedback informed those decisions. That's one of the ways we did that, or that's our approach to how we did that. Specifically, how we approached that was we would go out and meet people at job centers or job employment areas, whether that was meeting with folks at the University of Minnesota, which the light rail line goes right through, including all of the connecting bus lines, whether that was going and meeting with people at grocery stores. One of the key activity centers along the corridor is a strip mall that has a conventional grocery store, Cub Foods. It has clothing stores. It has shoe stores. It has every kind of everyday piece of commerce that we need. And again, we would go there and we would have a table. We would have simple information available that would discuss what the routes are and what the schedules are, and then how people can use those, how people can use the services. And one of the key things that we spent a lot of time talking with people about is not only what services are available, but just how you use those services. And this is something that we have seen consistently, that especially as new services introduced, that there is a learning curve for a lot of people, that people aren't necessarily comfortable with transit, that people may not necessarily have a lot of experience with riding a bus. And so everything from how do you schedule a ride, for example, with your proposed dial-a-ride services, or where do you stand to catch a fixed route bus service, how do you pay your fare, and the different media that are available for paying fares. Through all of those pieces that I just talked about, maps, schedules, fare media, communication materials, project information sheets. Again, that's where that brand will be so important, of you're promising people choices, and you're promising people mobility and accessibility, but then you are also asking them to join you in this partnership of helping to support the economy and improve the quality of life in Douglas County. Christina, can you talk beyond in-person interaction, how we also share and communicate information about potential new services.
Absolutely. So, as Jessica mentioned earlier, having that multi-pronged approach to be able to reach people is absolutely critical. Not everyone can come to a public meeting, not everyone can meet us in person. By far, one of the easiest ways to engage people is online. Now, that's not for everyone, especially some of the older population. We need to make sure that everything's accessible for them. But for the young parents that are running their kids to soccer practice and may not have time to come to meetings and may be running quickly by us in community events, the online opportunities are really extremely valuable. And so really, we want to leverage those as much as possible. The website really needs to be your central clearinghouse. That's everything that Mary just discussed, all of the maps, all of the different pieces of information need to be stored on the website, easily accessible, so that people can come there even if they can't meet us in person, they can come and take a look at that information. Even leveraging social media is a great way to direct people back to the website. So we don't want to necessarily provide tons of information to people through social media. Social media is a great way to bring people back to the website. The community events are also a really great way to direct people there. Sometimes when people are running past you, they only have 3 minutes or maybe a minute and a half to talk to you. Handing them those quarter-page cards that has the web address, that has the social media information, let them in their own time, in the comfort of their home, in their pajamas, be able to go online and take a look at the website. It's also important that we can provide some online videos and tutorials. So some of the travel training pieces that are nice to be able to do in person, if people can't meet us there, maybe they can use an online video that is 3 minutes long and teaches them how to ride the system. So all of those opportunities are really important. The other thing, particularly thinking about any of the populations, particularly some of the Latino-speaking, the Spanish-speaking individuals, having things translated online is another great way to be able to reach some of the community that maybe doesn't speak English fluently. So we can leverage all of those opportunities with all of the branding to carry through onto the online weekend.
Thank you, Christina. So Chair and committee members, on slide 10, I want to emphasize that we are energized by this opportunity to partner with you on this Douglas County Multimodal Transportation Services Education and Public and Awareness Project. We're excited to develop, deliver, and integrate into your operations a brand and an identity for your multimodal transportation services. We are excited to work with you to effectively communicate and productively communicate what those services are and how people can access and use them in a meaningful way. And we are really excited to work with you to strengthen your local relationships with your community and with your businesses. So with that, we are happy to discuss any of the items that we've talked about now or answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Again, we'll be consistent in going between each meeting. Commissioner Mulcair, I'll give you the first lead. Any questions?
Yes, and I was perhaps remiss in not asking this with the first group, and we can get a follow-up. Recent moves at the state level for regional transportation, apparently going from Greta to ATL, and we'll see how that finally shakes out at the end of the day. How well versed are you in those movements at the state capitol and their implications for Douglas County specifically? I yield back.
Absolutely. Chair, I can't see, so may I take the question?
Yes, please.
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
I would actually like Rob to talk about that one, if I may.
He's at the podium. He's ready.
Great. This is something, that is really significant in transit, the transit governance conversation, and it's something that I congratulate the Atlanta metropolitan area on having. It is something that we up here in Minneapolis and St. Paul have also been working through for about the past 15 years, and I have been in the center of that conversation. That being said, I think Rob is really in the center of the conversation in the Atlanta area.
Sure. Thanks, Mary. One thing we do know for sure about it is it's changing almost by the minute at the state capitol. And what it did accept, there were two competing bills, one in the Senate, one in the House. They both passed, and they weren't necessarily passed for what exactly they were, but they were passed so that they could continue talking about it and continue the conversation. I will say it's going to be a complex bill, whatever comes out. But one of the things that we've heard and we've seen over and over in the region is the local control and the local planning that needs to go into these plans. And so while there may be an entity that helps manage and helps run, I think the local input and the steps that are being taken by the local jurisdictions are very important for any regional plan. And so, you know, when we did the Fulton County plan, that's a large scale plan, but we were very intentional to build it from the ground up and it's a community-based plan. We didn't want to talk about transit for transit's sake. We want to talk about transit for the community's sake. And if any transit is going to be successful, it's going to have to serve the community well. And so that's our perspective. I think the folks who are talking about transit at the Capitol understand that. It may not seem that way when we're talking about a regional governance, but the conversations that we're having are where transit does need to be locally supported and planned. So that's
Excellent question. Anybody else?
Yeah, actually, I'll have a comment and then a question, but one of your slides spoke to the newer technology, the apps and that sort of thing. And it strikes me that we're sort of, at least in Douglas County, we're taking baby steps. We're in the very early stages. We have limited services at the moment. And of course, there could be more in the future, but we're trying to do an outreach, an educational campaign with the existing services with the understanding that there could be enhancements coming down the line. But how would you approach a more limited campaign in terms of we do not have fixed route service as of yet. We have demand response for seniors and that sort of thing. So the focus as it relates to this particular effort is going to be more limited than the broader typical approach for a larger municipality.
Sure, that is an excellent question, and I appreciate that one very much. I am working, I'll give an example to answer the question. I am working with Southeast Minnesota. So it is the 11 counties that surround the city of Rochester, Minnesota, which you may not have heard of, but you probably have heard of the major employer in Rochester, and that's Mayo Clinic, one of the leading healthcare providers in the world. I am working with the rural transit and very, very small urban transit providers on this very question, on supporting them and taking some baby steps. They have some commuter services. It's actually very similar to the types of services that you have in Douglas County. I am working with them to make sure that they are branding that as a cohesive set of services so that riders or people who are potential riders have better information about the services that are available and how those services integrate. And then we are also making sure that we are pulling the providers together. I think there are 7 transit providers that I'm working with, that we are working together as a set of transit providers to have accurate information. So starting out with just plain accurate and clear information is step number 1. And then making sure that that is highly accessible to people. Accessible in everything from the sense of, again, having a base website where we can direct people back to having information, for example, in senior centers or at food banks or at public libraries, or even at high schools. That's another place where we see that some kids are trying to figure out, boy, how can I get from, let's say, Red Wing to Winona, for example, for the basketball game, and there isn't a bus that runs. So what other choices do I have? And they do have some dial-a-ride services that are available if people don't have other transportation choices. So again, it's making sure that you've got that really clear information, that you have that brand and that brand promise of we're going to get you there and you can trust us. And number 3, using that basic set of tools, whether that's on paper or having a very focused online presence, to make sure that that information is available to folks. The other piece that I didn't mention, and I neglected that, is having a phone number that people can call. If nothing else, I think that is one of the most helpful tools. And along with that phone number, then having somebody trained on the other end of the phone who can answer that question, who can take the call, talk about the services that are available, and then if needed, help somebody plan their trip. Others want to add on to that?
We've only got a few more minutes in this, so let me make sure that everybody can get their questions in.
Great.
Gary, I've got a couple of them.
Yes.
We have 4 minutes.
Our outreach project, it's not a referendum on whether or not we're going to have the bus service. It's also not a propaganda piece from us on why we should have the bus service. It's strictly educational. These are our routes, these are our times, this is what we think we'll charge. What we want from the public is their comments on how they think the routes might be tweaked, or the times right, or are we in line with what the service would cost. How can you keep the flow of information and comments focused on those particular things?
That is a fantastic question. Christina, can I have you answer that from the perspective of some of the planning efforts that we've done?
Sure, absolutely. So I think at the end of the day, we want to figure out exactly what those questions are. So we do have survey options that can give people very targeted options, so multiple choice type answers. So we can really focus those questions. There's still an opportunity for open comment, and we anticipate that people will give us comments maybe outside of what we're specifically looking to request. We can log those, but we'll focus the efforts on organizing and cataloging all the information that are targeted to the questions that we specifically need input on. So I think some of the survey tools are very helpful, and we've used some different ones that are very easy to use, very straightforward. We can ask the very basic questions. We can build our own job form surveys if we want. And the outreach activities that we do in person can also be very targeted to that specific request. So I think we can stay very, very targeted. We anticipate that people will give us comments that may be outside of that, but we'll go ahead and log them as public record and continue to organize from there.
All right. I'm going to combine my 2 questions into one. We will stay on time. So hear this out. And I heard you mention earlier that you mentioned, urban. As you know, here in Georgia, Atlanta is the capital, and it's surrounded by a county called Fulton, and it's pretty much a demarcation of north versus south. This is a consistent question for all 3 groups. You look at Douglas, we also have very, very different character areas based on the 4 commission districts. You have the eastern border, which is touching Cobb and Fulton, which is typically what we see as urban-suburban. You have District 3, which tends to be more suburban-rural, which is our southern border along the Chattahoochee River going up west. You have our western border, which tends to be pretty much rural, for the sake of conversation. And then you got our northern district, which is District 1, which tends to be more suburban city. So if the concentration of sort of the proposed system is probably central east, and recognizing these different character areas, and I heard your emphasis on analysis, my question becomes, your emphasis on being able to do online applications. Douglas County tends to be one of for the past 3 presidential cycles, is very active. They vote, they get out. And so how do you blend that? I don't want to lose to say, well, how do you got to hear their heart. Online is great. It has a great emphasis for the millennials and those people who are very, very savvy. But this population gets out. How do you bridge that? Now, that's my closing comment. Question. Anybody can take that one.
Mary, I'm going to defer to Christina really quickly because I think her Gwinnett experience really speaks to that.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, So, yes, as you were describing the different commission districts in Douglas, it feels very, very similar. Obviously, Gwinnett is large, but there's some of the same types of situations where the western part is definitely more urban to suburban, and the eastern parts of the county are very rural. And then that's where kind of the multi-pronged approach to outreach really has to come into play. Transit is challenging because you can't have an intersection project everywhere. You can't have a sidewalk project everywhere. The transit service is going to be concentrated in certain areas, but there are different types of service. So right now you have a lot of on-demand types of service. Eventually there may be some growth into the fixed route services, and maybe then the on-demand services move into some of those newer areas. In terms of receiving input from people and being able to educate them and engage them, I think in the places where online isn't as effective, then we need to be there in person. And so those are the opportunities to be at the different festivals in the parks. Figuring out where the people are, maybe it's participating in a 5K, maybe not running, we're not running in a 5K, but we'll set up a table to be able to talk to people. And so finding those places, and we want to use the network within Douglas already. So one of the things that we've learned is we can't possibly reach everybody, but there are networks of people, advocacy groups that are already out there and operating that are engaged with the local community members. If it's a Kiwanis Club, or maybe it's, we've worked with the Latin America Association. So we find the organizations that are already active and who can give us avenues into reaching those people. So maybe it's speaking at a meeting, maybe it's finding the right community event, maybe it's participating in a sporting activity. Whatever that might be, but figuring out what works for Douglas in the different parts of the community, and it's not going to be the same answer in every part of the community. So I think we just need to figure out, use the resources that exist, use the elected officials, to figure out where the best places are to be able to reach those. Does that answer the question?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. That was very good. And again, I threw that one out there. We're going to have to conclude this. We want to thank you guys. We want to be on time. Thank you for your time and contribution to this conversation. Mr. Peacock?
Yes, sir.
Will you close us out and bring them?
Yes, sir. We appreciate you being with us today. The information is a great help to us as we try to make our decisions. Again, we thank you for being with us today, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Mary. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We wanted to share some videos.
All right, we've got one more guy, so thank you for your patience. Yes, sir, okay.
Yes, we will have, just one copy of everything, so it's only one. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're gonna.
We'll make a copy.
Actually, it's a book.
I understand.
Yeah.
Just copy. Here, you keep for the record. We'll get copies made.
This is examples,
Um,
cards and stuff.
Okay, let me just scan it, keep it. Just so we have it on file. All right, one more. One more. I'll do a third couple copies. I can know it'll be bouncing here. I want to thank you guys for being here and stuff, so we'll be sensitive to your time as well. We'll get through this as fast as possible. Thank you. Oh, yes. Oh, wow. So is that all in order? Or what do they do?
It's very cold in here.
You're sitting right under the vent.
That's where that's her
Subject
thought.
to assigns.
Well, I can meet you right over there, out from under that vent. Go be God.
I'm good.
Yes, sir.
See you.
All right. Okay. Good, thank you. Hi. Go be God. Nice to meet you. Well, thanks for being with us today. Okay. I hope it was useful. Yes, thank you so much.
I said that on my Jack and Jack apples, so it's good. Now, my kids are constant.
I recognize you.
They
have their own keys.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, you gotta go around. You gotta go around.
Whatever was on the schedule.
Goes away.
Come on.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
That took a little while.
It takes a
Russ,
bit.
okay, you got it? Okay. If you will, we have seats for you over at the end.
Right.
What you got? Pat, good to meet you. Come on down this way. Those are your assigned seats.
Outside?
That's you're probably gonna be standing up most of the time anyway.
That's fine.
We are videoing this, so we would ask that you kind of stand within the area of the podium
Sorry.
when you speak, whoever's speaking.
Good morning.
I know you'll be.
How are you?
Glad to see y'all.
Sure, that's fine.
They got one more.
Okay.
Heather,
And they said it was ours.
Just wish it was a little warmer.
Now, are we gonna use the thumb drive or just the computer?
I'm pulling out a thumb drive.
Okay.
That might be easier.
That's easiest.
Hi, Heather, sorry I didn't see you last night. I was there, I was just I understand. It's the best time to do stuff on the street, right? Yeah, I don't have my boss yet. She's busy.
Are there people on video or is
I
this
ran
recorded?
out the door, I need to do it.
Just wondering if I can do it
still
now.
wanna buy that.
There is no one looking at this at this point.
So I
This will be for playback later.
That meeting lasted a bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jennifer was saying.
We have our own TV station
We're gonna be over.
that we run news and that and so on. So,
We're excited that hopefully that.
exactly, he's in there listening to you. So this will be put on that
She didn't tell me
station
anything
for
was going on.
review by our citizens.
Sit and listen.
Right, right.
Really?
It wasn't anything super, well, I mean.
Pretty cool. DCTV 23.
It's just nice to get that done.
That's right.
Is this my big moment?
This is your 15 seconds of fame.
Wow.
It's bound to come sooner or later.
I can't believe it. Finally
There are at least
happened.
19 people.
At least 19. That's good.
I got a little water here, I got two
So do
boxes.
you, every meeting?
So am I.
I don't know, like taping.
But you see,
Aside.
I know, that's why I was thinking.
They do work sessions.
One out of car.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. They just small board.
Chapters that really Tuesday.
That's amazing.
That's a whole lot. So we're working
Really?
Okay. So we know where
And it's not like, but
You've been doing that for a
Whatever.
while.
Where's the meeting?
check here.
Oh, okay. Close to the park? Oh, it is in the park. Okay, okay. We have about 5 minutes, so if you need to,
I'm gonna run the restroom very quickly.
okay. Would you need water or anything?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Sure, water.
Okay.
Yep.
Smart screens. Come on, Mark.
Sit on the floor.
How you doing? Good.
My yoga. Stretch out.
All right.
Yoga sounds just my 2 cents.
We got 5 minutes.
Okay, we got 5 minutes.
Yep, you're.
Oh, thank you. I hope that's a good thing.
No,
It
he's
is a
Army.
good thing. Oh.
No, he's Army.
Hi, good morning. Rachel. Nice to meet you, Rachel Tobin. Yes.
Learn new technology.
Watching
Watching and learning. We work with Toyota, and they just moved in a new headquarters. In Texas.
Okay. It is.
And they got all the balance.
Right.
Does the school system pay for the resource officers? They pay for the resource officers? I think they do. I'm not positive. I have to check to see what you said. I think they do. I think it's a job. That's in my mind.
This last one.
I got an email from somebody. The county has turned down help for the school. Because of the shooting. Yeah. Not responding. School system gets 65% of tax. I was there.
I am.
We can make sure we have it.
I'll actually,
That's what I thought.
I'll actually hold this up when we get down to 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes. But they, you have 30 minutes.
New precinct. Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't.
It seems like the first one has been spoken for about 20 minutes, and then the last 10 have been questioning. But I mean, if you go longer, it's kind of at 30 minutes. You can wrap it up.
We're gonna tell people they can, I told them to sit down. We're pretty casual.
Yeah. But, this is the, I just.
Better product. Okay.
Questions for us before we get going?
No, we're going to actually, Vice Chair Robinson will kind of kick it off.
Okay.
And then I'll introduce Colin, and we'll go from there. Okay? We've got some time built in for questions afterwards.
Okay. And we figured on 30 minutes?
30 minutes. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get through that quickly. We like to be more conversational than presentational usually.
That's
So if you guys
good.
have questions, feel free to jump in.
Make it a career.
Great.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you want to go? Because it's kind of like, I just need to get
Appreciate y'all.
Colin, do you have a card?
We were at cabin fever.
Yeah.
Card? Because I can't find your information in the presentation. Both Patrick.
Yes, so I'm in business development.
Okay, got it. Go ahead.
Ask that question.
Okay.
Just to clarify.
Oh, Rachel, thank you. Okay, Vice Chair. Sir? Yes.
Yes, but he just, wife was just
Kansas.
hard cooked.
You have the shoulder maintenance been opening this afternoon. See how that goes.
We'll start in 1 minute.
I was good about to walk in there and just stop.
Oh. That's right.
With somebody, I just go in there and get county coffee like I'm supposed to. think I've earned it.
That's fine. That's what it's there for.
Boy, what service. No, thank you. I'm fine. Yes.
Maybe too much coffee. Bouncing off the wall.
Ms. Mulcahy, you ready? All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're back from our break. We're going to be consistent with, this is our last of the 3 finalists for the scope of work that was put out there. I'm going to do a courtesy, as we've done everybody else thus far. My name is Kelly Robinson. I'm Vice Chairman of the Board of Commissioners. I am also the Chairman of this committee. To my right is our County Administrator, Mark Teal. Across from him is Commissioner Mike Mulcahy of the 3rd District. Next to him is Bill Peacock, our Director of Purchasing. Miguel Valentin, Director of Transportation. Gary Watson, which is our Director of Multimodal. And we've got Jovine Milligan, who is our Secretary of this committee. Rick Martin is our Director of Communications, and Tiffany Stewart-Stanley is our Director of External Affairs. Now at the table. Bill Peacock?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Vice Chair. We're pleased to have Jackson Spalding with us as the 3rd presenter today. I'll ask Mr. Colin Owens, if he will, please to come up to the podium and start the presentation and introduce who he has with him today. Thank you, sir.
Sure, thank you, and thanks to all of you for having us here, and thank you to all the citizens of Douglas County who may be watching this later on. I'm happy to get my 15 minutes of fame. Maybe this is the start of my IMDb page. But I'm Colin Owens of Jackson Spalding. I'm here with Rachel Tobin and Pat Hill, and I'd like to have them come join me up here. And also I'd like to say too that we don't want this to just be a here to there presentation. We'd love for you to ask questions throughout. We're much more of a conversational bunch. We feel like we do our best work when we're collaborative. So if there's any point in our conversation as we're presenting, discussing anything, you have a question, or you just want to throw an anecdote, please do that. Sure. So Pat, you want to introduce yourself first? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Pat Hill. I'm a founding partner of Jackson Spalding. We started our firm in 1995 with 8 people and a hope that we can do things a better way. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but that was kind of where we started the agency. Like I said, back in 95, 8 people. I think we had 12 clients originally. And one of the hallmarks of our firm is that we work with our clients, our customers, long term. So we've worked with Delta Airlines for 15 years. We've worked with Orkin Pest Control for 15 years. We've worked with public supermarkets for about 22 years. Oh, sorry, it's supposed to be over here. So we've worked with, we keep our customers long term, and that is really one of the hallmarks of our agency. And we try to build a lot of trust and a lot of partnership among our clients. So that's really our approach. And we appreciate you having us out today. Rachel?
Hello, I'm Rachel Tobin, and I've been at Jackson Spalding for 6 years. One of my claims to fame is I'm a recovering journalist. I did journalism for 13 years, including working for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Atlanta Business Chronicle, and the Daily Report. I'm currently president of my condo board, so for everyone who's here today being involved, like, kudos to you, because it takes a lot of time and it's really hard sometimes to find people to be involved, so thanks for being here, and I hope we can answer a lot of your questions. My role at Jackson Spalding, I do a lot of media relations, and I've worked on several transportation projects, commercial real estate projects, and other types of work, so we're happy to be here today.
And again, I'm Colin Owens. I am this gentleman here. I focus on business development at Jackson Spalding. So as you heard, no one actually used the title, and that's one of the unique things about JS is we don't have titles. We actually feel like having a flat structure and having a culture without titles keeps us focused on what matters, and that's what Pat was alluding to, and that's our clients. By keeping that flat structure, we're able to put the best people on the right projects and just do what needs to be done. When I first started out, I was in a meeting with the client team, and an intern told Bo Spalding what he needed to do on a project, and I was floored, and I thought that that intern might be fired on the spot, but he just said, no, it sounds great, I'll get it to you. And that's when I knew that I was in a special place that was really focused on what actually matters. How we like to do our work, and again, this is what Pat alluded to too, it is in reference to this picture here. I was in a conference a few years ago, and someone asked the IBM CMO, what is the best agency relationship for you? And he said, I want an agency that's in the rowboat with me, not one that's on the shore shouting directions on where to paddle. And that's really stuck with me, not only because it's just a great metaphor, but that's really how we like to work. We want to get embedded with our clients. We like to think that if we had the opportunity to work with you, we were sitting in this room in a year, that people would walk in and not know who worked for Douglas County and who worked for Jackson Spalding. We'd all be talking the exact same manner and going through the same progressions and process to try to get to the same results and goals too. Our vision is to be the most trusted and respected marketing communications agency, not to be the flashiest, the most well-known, the most highly decorated, the loudest. We want to earn the trust and respect of our clients, and that's something that we work on every day. Glenn Jackson likes to say we treat every day like we just opened our doors, and that's also how we treat our own people too. We know that our people have the option to work wherever they'd like to, but we have people that have stuck around and have stuck with us, and talent that wants to come work there, and that ultimately allows us to do better work for clients, like if we have had the chance to work with you. This is a graphic of what we do. This was in our presentation that we had sent over before, but this is not only what we do, but how we do it, so I thought I'd take a quick second to just walk through that. The client is always at the center of everything we do. We want to make sure that we're understanding what challenges you face, what keeps you up at night, what things you're worried about, what things that you have always wanted to accomplish that haven't quite been able to. Then we want to go and look at your branding. What makes you uniquely different? How can you stand out in a marketplace that might have a lot of noise or clutter? And then how do we develop a strategy around that? We believe wholeheartedly in strategy. We don't do anything without a strategic approach. One of my colleagues likes to say, strategy is hard and tactics are fun. That's why everybody wants to jump right into tactics, but we really believe in a strategic approach so that we can achieve what we need to. Then these things here in white are what we refer to as our outreach services. That's how we can get in touch with the people that matter to you most, your target audiences. And audiences are paramount for everything that we do. Ultimately, if you're not talking to the right people in the right ways, you're kind of wasting your time. Beyond that is measurement. We want to make sure that everything that we're doing is achieving the results that we set out to do at the beginning. And if not, then we're optimizing that. And that's why those arrows are two-way. So that we're going back, we're visiting a strategy of things that not ultimately achieve the results that we wanted to, we tweak, we reposition, we go at it again. This is just a little bit of a snapshot of our agency. We have about 160 employees, seem to be adding people all the time. We've been in business for almost 23 years now, it will be in a few months. And we currently have 7 active owners, and for the type of work that we would be doing, we also have about 30 people in our creative department. So it's almost like having an advertising and a creative services firm inside of this greater marketing communications agency as well. Also wanted to highlight some relevant clients that we work with, if you have any, or that we have worked with on a project basis. If you have any questions on these, we're happy to elaborate. We're going to walk through a couple of these later on just to dig into a little bit deeper, and that's Cobb Link, which we feel like is very relevant to the type of work that we'd be doing with you, and also MMPT, which Rachel led to, the multimodal transportation terminal, or passenger terminal downtown. But we've also, we bumped into some friends from Kimley Horn outside, and we've worked with them as well too. So I wanted to dig into how we develop strategy just very quickly. I'm not going to belabor this too much, but ultimately everything starts with audience, as I mentioned. Who are you trying to talk to, and how and why? How can we understand them the best we can, and all the little things that make them tick and that resonate with them, so that your messages and what you need to have them know will stick with them. Then we go all the way through all these different things. The core part of what we look at is here on the bottom and progresses through. Ultimately, when you look at all these things together, the strategy just kind of falls out of all those inputs. So we believe in a scale, don't skip process for strategy, and that is that we don't have to spend 2 months looking at all this stuff. Sometimes this can be done in a matter of hours, but we feel like if you don't examine each one of these 10 steps, you could be missing something important. It's potential recommendations that we thought would come out of what we would do with you. We don't want to be presumptuous. Some of this was in the RFP you sent out, and some of it is also some things that we think you might need, and we can again talk about these in a little bit. These are the things that we may feel that we would need to work on with I'm going to highlight quickly our creative process, because I know one of the things that you're looking to do is to build a brand aesthetic and a brand look and a logo. And this is how we go about that. We always start with research and analysis and carry it through what we want to understand, like what, again, the audience, what is going to stick with them, what's going to resonate with them best, what's going to help you stand out. Building that strategy, ultimately conceptualizing. We usually, for a logo development, we'll have 2 teams of designers working on that, and we'll come up with anywhere from 4 to 8 concepts. And then we'll help you realize which one is right for you, and then scrutinize that and make sure we're measuring it against other things to make sure there's no potential trademark issues, or it just doesn't look too much like another thing too. So as we explore brand identity and how we would develop a brand identity for the bus service in Douglasville, the first thing we would do is a brandscapes process. It's hard to know what visual you want to set out on, or what visual aesthetic, what visual path and direction, unless you have something to look at it against. So it's just hard to say, well, I want something modern, or I want something Americana. But if we develop a brandscapes process where we develop somewhere between 3 and 5 boards that each have an individual aesthetic and a look and a feel, then you can start to react to them and go, ooh, I like that, or I don't like that one as much, or maybe I like the words from here or the textures from there for the type of look and feeling that we want to develop on how we're going to bond with these audiences we're trying to connect with. This is actually one that we developed for Georgia Forestry Foundation. We helped them rebrand a couple months ago. We developed 3 different boards, and we thought going into it, and our designers did too, that they were going to want to go with a more of an Americana type farm-to-table look, and I know you all know what that would be. If you've ever watched Fixer Upper, that kind of look. But ultimately what they wanted was something like this. They were like, no, we want to be more progressive. We want to be more forward-looking. And we wouldn't have known that had we not gone through this process. So ultimately, this is an inexpensive process to go through that saves a ton of time and money later on, because you don't have to go through rounds of revisions and starts and stops to where the client and the agency start to feel like you're not communicating well. This really helps set you off on a solid communications footing too. This is the logo we ended up developing for Georgia Forestry Foundation, and we have a larger presentation around how all this came about, should you want to see it at some point. But this is the logo we developed and how we developed it and why. So we like to have meaning behind the logo and not just a cool looking brand mark. So for this one, it represented the 3 parts of their pillars of why they exist, and that was forest policy studies, forest leadership, and forest education. But it also represents the sun, the sky, and the field. And you also have a G embedded in it and an F embedded in it. And then this also was analogous to the yin and the yang and the balance of nature and people together. So we like to have multiple meanings inside of it. Again, so it's not just, hey, that looks cool. These are some logos that we've developed over the years, over the past, I'd say 5 or 6 years or so. If you have any questions on how these were developed, we'd be happy to explain that. Again, Cobb Link is one that we feel like is worth talking a little bit more about, which we'll do in a second. Endeavor Air was an airline that came together of 3 airlines that merged together, and we helped name that and do the logo for that a few years ago. It's a Delta affiliate. And then 2 CIDs that are in the Metro Atlanta area that Pat Hill worked on and Rachel worked on as well. So I want to hand this over to Rachel to talk about MMPT, because this was her baby for a while. So Rachel, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So the multimodal passenger terminal was a design study that was done by Forest City, Integral, and Cousins Properties, and they were hired by GDOT to do feasibility study. The idea was to put a train station, bus station, taxi station, bicycle station all downtown in the Gulch area. This was one of multiple studies that was done over 30, 40 years. And it turned out there wasn't a sponsor for the project in the end. The governor and the mayor, neither of them wanted to end up investing in it. So right now that area is under consideration by some developers. But this was a very exciting process to work on. It was about almost 2-year process, and we were in charge of making sure we communicated with journalists about the project and got as much press coverage as we could, as well as with citizens. And we held 3 public meetings to show, the kind of initialize the process, then show designs as they were in progress, and then get to the final design. We also had to work through the NEPA process, which is the environmental review process.
And so we coordinated with multiple agencies, from the City of Atlanta and MARTA to GDOT to the local EPA office and the EPD. So it was a very interesting process. We set up a lot of systems to make sure everyone was on board. We had communications meetings among the agencies. And then we had, over the course of the 2 years, we had hundreds of people participate in public meetings. So even though the plans did end up on a shelf, which we had hoped they wouldn't, the process, I think, went well, and we got a lot of coverage for it. So yeah.
All right, I'll talk a little bit about our work for Cobb Link. Who here knows Cobb Community Transit? Anyone? Yeah. CCT? Well, CCT's been around for 25 years, right? And so they came to us. Actually, we were partnered with Kimley Horn, who we work with on North Fulton CID and Cumberland CID, and our partners at Kimley Horn called us and said, hey, we've got this project. We're working with Cobb Community Transit, and they think they want to rebrand. They don't know exactly what they want to do with their rebranding, but they think they want to rebrand. And we said, well, what do you mean rebrand? Just redo CCT and make a different logo? And they said, no, we really want to rename the whole organization. We've got a whole new idea of where we want to go with our transit system in Cobb County. And we said, great, we'd love to be involved in that project. So we worked very closely with the engineering and urban design firm of Kimley Horn, with the Cobb DOT, and with the Cobb County Commission, frankly, on developing a new name, a new look, and then all of the related materials. I put 3 terms down here at the bottom. 1, complete rebranding. Complete rebranding. So CCT now only exists kind of as a DBA. You still see Cobb Community Transit sometimes, but sometimes it's on their bus right here, a service of CCT. We didn't need to go through the legal process of completely changing the name of CCT, so saved a lot of money by not going through that whole legal process, but we really just rebranded their bus system and their transportation system as Cobb Link. And now, if you've seen on the highways, they wanted something very visible, so we ended up with a bright yellow bus with some great visibility on it, but a complete rebranding of that system. Secondly, we started with primary and secondary research. This was a process when you go into a renaming of a whole transit system in some place like Cobb County, not from Cobb County, so I guess I can say this here. Cobb County thinks a lot of itself, right? That they are very proud of Cobb County. And so they wanted something that represented their brand very, very well. So we did a lot of primary and secondary research. Primary research being that we went to bus stations and we asked people about the CCT system. What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? What would make you ride it more? What would make your friends ride the system? So that was the primary research that we did. And then we did a lot of secondary research around what have other bus systems done, transit systems done in other parts of the country as they've rebranded. What is the latest and greatest look? MARTA just recently went through a rebranding with all of its buses. They kept the MARTA name, but they have a whole new look on a lot of their buses. So we did a lot of that secondary research. And then we talked about multiple governments involved. We have a process at Jackson Spalding we call an excavation. And this excavation is to dig deeply into a brand and into a persona and come up with, it could be a new brand name, it could be a new brand look, but it's a weeks-long process that we dig into, and it all focuses around one big meeting that we have. We brought in the Atlanta Regional Commission, we brought in Georgia DOT, we brought in Cobb County, we brought in North Fulton CID, we brought in a number of different government jurisdictions to weigh in on what this new brand for Cobb Community Transit was going to be. So that was kind of our starting point. Where we ended up is with Cobb Link. And Cobb Link keeps a good focus on Cobb County in here. They like the fact that it's intersecting, because Cobb does intersect with so many things. It kind of connects to the 285-75 interchange that's up there. They like the different colors. And then the link word comes with the, again, the connectivity. They know that this transit system is helping link their people, kind of like Douglas Connect is going to connect Douglas County, right? So that's where Cobb County went. And that's the logo and the mark that we created. And you'll see on the back of their buses, this mark. And it says C-O-B-B in the mark. Again, Cobb County we knew that would be of interest to Cobb County. Once we did that, then we came up with all of the affiliated things, from bus designs to they have different bus types. They have a direct bus that is different from their circulator bus, that is different from their local bus, that is different from their flex bus and their lift bus. And you'll notice that all of these are color keyed, so when you get into the maps, they're all color keyed as well. That's all something that we did at Jackson Spalding, working with Cobb County and Kimley Horn to develop these ideas. But we had to design different buses as well, different graphics for each of these types of buses. They have shorter buses, longer buses, and lift buses that are for paratransit services. So they have a lot of different bus types. Then we designed signs for the different buses, system maps, even the little placards that go inside the buses. So a lot of design work was done as well. And we continue to help them on some specific design elements. So that's what we've done for Cobb Link. Any questions before I move on? Okay.
I believe that wraps
There we
us
go.
up. So we'd be happy to answer any questions. We'd be happy to elaborate on anything else. Just let us know what you'd like to talk about.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, we try to be sensitive to let people, I appreciate your approach about engaging and collaborating, but we wanted to make sure you had time to get out what you want to share with us during this time period. All right, I'm going to turn to my committee members. Mr. Mulcair, always first lead.
Yes, thank you. A lot of movement in terms of regional transportation at the state capital level, and I know it's still in flux. But what do you see as implications for Douglas County and implications / opportunities for Douglas County with some of the changes that perhaps will be coming out of the State House? Any one of you?
Well,
Are you talking about the 13 county that was just passed?
Yeah,
this week?
ATL, versus Greta.
Yeah.
yeah. So Brandon Beach, who's been pushing ATL for a long time, was my client at North Fulton CIP, and he's had this vision for creating Atlanta transit lines all over the city. And I think it's an interesting approach. It's worked in some areas, it's not worked in other areas of the country. But I do think that Atlanta, I think we need better connectivity between all these places. People don't just work in one county, right? People don't just live in Douglas County and work. A lot of people do. A lot of people live and work in Douglas County. But I would say that, and I have not looked at your research to see how many people are actually leaving the county, but I know where I live in Roswell, people leave. They go to downtown, they go to North Fulton, they go to Gwinnett, they go all over the place. And so the connectivity in Atlanta proper, the whole Atlanta region, is extremely important for us. You may have a better handle on specifics.
I mean, I read the news story about it, and I saw that they want to rename it from Greta to the ATL. The ATL. So aside from that, I don't know how it's going to impact Douglas County. We'd love to look into it.
And that, truthfully, that was one of the things when we were looking at renaming Cobb Community Transit. What name could we have that also could potentially work with other counties and work with other transit entities? And again, Cobb County wanting to be the lead on those things, they said, well, Cobb Link, you could have Douglas Link, you could have Atlanta Transit Line, the ATL, it could be Cobb Link, it could be Atlanta Transit Link. So we did think about that as we were rebranding. Short term, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on Douglas County. Long term, it may be that you have much more connectivity to a larger transit system.
I think connectivity, so the Gulch was obviously the MMPT project was trying to not just link transit within Atlanta, but across states. There's really no main Amtrak station, so that was a big consideration they were looking at.
Greyhound, we have all these places where things are just kind of one-offs, and their bigger concern was how do we get everything under one place. That's how a lot of, sort of cities that were built around the turn of the 1900s are organized. They're organized around big train stations. And I think as we look at some of the corporate headquarters that are wanting to move here, more and more transportation and transit are their number one, requirement in addition to the talent. So I think it's important that, the state's looking at it regionally. I think it could help you, really, in the long run.
And I think it will require all the individual players to work together and collaborate, ultimately. I mean, we're not New York or Chicago that has a centralized public transportation system. So, it's up to the regional players to develop solutions that not only work for inter-county transportation, but also, like Pat was mentioning, inside and out, going outbound and coming into, and how all those can work together. I think ultimately that will be the success factor.
Back to you, Mr. Chairman. You're welcome. Director Valentine?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Related to the multimodal study, was your involvement in selecting the site, or was it already selected and you were trying to develop a scheme and design for it?
That's right. It was the latter, and we were brought in by the master planning team. So Georgia DOT wanted to find out if the Gulch, was it feasible to put a big multimodal station there. And part of the work that the master planning team did was they looked at the ownership of all the properties around there. I mean, that's a really complex property, and you have active freight lines running through there. That was basically the job of the master planning team, was to understand, is it feasible, and then also to get to a design, so that if the state decided they wanted to do it, the design was ready to go. And we were a team member on the master planning team, because we're the communications PR part, yeah.
And as part of your original proposal documentation, you had a case study on SunTrust Park. I don't know what your involvement there was.
Sure.
How did you manage, or how did you go about differentiating the background discussion about whether it was done properly, was the right thing, to whatever you were engaged in terms of marketing? Because there was obviously a lot of discussion about that process.
I can speak on a high level about it, and you guys please add in too. We were engaged by the Braves before they decided to move from Turner Field, when it was just an idea to potentially move to Cobb. So we worked on that in secret for about a year. And there was a team of about 3 to 4 people that worked on that. And we want to help our clients with the business decisions they want to move forward with, and not necessarily help them form those decisions. So we worked through how they were going to communicate those things. They felt like moving the stadium was in the best interest of their fans and the team. And ultimately, the biggest issue around that was not separate from moving it out of downtown, where it had been for years, was the transportation around how people were going to get to the ballpark and where they were going to park. So the bulk of our work, once we announced the new ballpark, was working on the transportation flow. And the team could speak. I could set up a separate call with the team that worked on that, so that they could speak in much more detail about the transportation schemes, but it was highly complicated. We created a microsite, we created videos, we created infographics, messaging. We had people from the Braves available to speak to media so that they could speak about how the transportation was going to go. They coordinated with rideshare programs like Uber and Lyft, and also with DOT and with MARTA and with Cobb County Transit, to make sure that there was a comprehensive solution for how people are going to be able to get in and out, and also use those, if you've been to any of the games there, use the private parking lots that people used to.
Yeah. And if you've been to a Braves game, you've realized that you can't just drive up and park anymore. You can't just hand somebody your $10 and park. You've got to have that in advance, and that's by design. And so pull it up on your phone. When you buy a ticket, you buy your parking, you know where to go, you get directions from Waze, and Waze takes you there. Waze is integrated, so it's So it knows the roads that the Braves are going to close before the game, and it will route you around that automatically. So we work with that level of technology and that level of depth with the Braves and with Cobb County to make that whole process happen.
Director Watson?
Talk a little bit about your outreach strategy. How are you going to engage the public in letting them know about our current services and our existing services?
Yeah, I think that you have so many channels these days, which makes it a lot easier than like years ago. Maybe all you had was the local newspaper and notices around town, right? So today you can use, I would still use the media. I would also use social media. I would use websites. You might have your TV channel for the county. I think there's a lot of ways that you can get the message out. So we would want to, create a whole plan for you around that.
And we'd want to look to see what's working, how you've been communicating with your constituents so far, and with the citizens of Douglas. So, because you know better than we would on what types of communication channels have worked, and use those. We don't like to come in and put our agency stamp on something and throw everything out you've been doing just to own it. We want to be able to use what's already working and accentuate that and use those channels to be able to communicate with people, but also to use best practices we know to make some of those better and make those more effective, but also to possibly include other things depending on what the mix you're already using might be.
Because we know your communications has already started on this. I mean, this is a year-long process, a plan that's been developed. You're well into the communications around this. You've also got an opposing group that's formed and also well into their communications around this. So we look at all those different aspects and see where we can use your existing tools and bring some of our own tools. We have a whole digital team that works on communications for Chick-fil-A and for Primrose daycare franchises, and frankly for Cobb Community Transit, we relied on our digital team as well. So we'd look at how we can augment what you're already doing and then weigh in some of these new technologies that our digital team and others are using to make it as best possible.
And some of that's dependent upon budget too. How much do you have to invest in the communications campaign? And then based on that number, what do we feel like would be the most effective things to do based on that number? Every brand in the world wishes they had just 15% more budget. Coca-Cola wishes they had that. And they're working with hundreds of millions of dollars, yeah. So everybody always wishes they could do just a little bit more, but everyone has to make decisions on what's going to be most effective.
And how long did it take you to develop the Cobb Link graphics?
Well, the graphics themselves or the whole process?
The
The
whole
whole process
process.
was about a year and a half, close to 2 years long. But developing, well, and the graphics came out of a lot of the things that we learned in our excavation session. We pulled into the graphics that you see. As Colin walked through the Georgia Forestry Commission's logo, we don't just throw logo ideas out there. We try to put some real thought into it and make it really relevant to your group and your organization and what you want that logo to say to your customers.
So if we weren't doing a deep dive branding process like an excavation like Pat mentioned, we'd still want to have some deep conversations with you about what you foresee the brand essence being and the brand positioning and what it will mean to people and what it will mean to you and why you created it. Have all those semi-esoteric conversations that seem like we're going off on tangents, but it is real substance to help create those marks. That brand process and logo design process that I mentioned is about 2 months, give or take a little bit.
Sorry, can I mention? You good? Okay. All right, I've got, we're good on time, so I'm going to ask a couple questions. And to Commissioner Mulcair's point about when you're assessing the environment, the macro effect, right? And you talked about political overlay at the state level. Just bring this here locally, what local jurisdiction has control. My question becomes, Douglas County has 4 character areas. And I need to hit Douglas County. Right? 4 different character areas to the east, you sort of that urban, and this is a consistent question to all 3 groups, so bear with it. Douglas County has 4 character areas by district. You have the eastern border, which is closest to Cobb, flowing across the Chattahoochee River, which is more urban, suburban. Along the southern border, along the Chattahoochee all the way out west, you have what's called, that we will call suburban rural. Dead west It's all rural for the most part. And of course, our northern border is more of a suburban city, which is that inner. Right? So you have these 4 different areas. It's almost the equivalent of North and South Fulton, very distinct different areas. Lines of demarcation, whether it's the highway, whether it's railroad, you name it, you guys get it. Or the river. For that point, how do you acknowledge that everybody's not technically savvy? Atlanta Metro, it's sort of like, when you cross that Chattahoochee, it's a whole different world when you come across that hill at Thornton Road, right? It's 2 different worlds. And what I'm hearing is this advanced, here's this advanced approach. How do you take in consideration where Douglas County was one of the top 5 voting counties for the last 3 presidential cycles? In other words, they get out. They may not be the most advanced. I mean, okay, some people may use Facebook, but I think you guys hear it, because I hear what you're saying. You have some very advanced tools, but how do we not forsake those pockets? What is your approach to those pockets that may not just be on the grid?
I think it goes back to what Colin said, is what are you already doing to engage those citizens?
Yep.
We kind of glossed over, but traditional media relations, I mean, we can use public service announcements on radio stations. We can see, are they listening to radio? We're not talking podcast. We're talking like on the dial, So I think we'd want to look and see what has worked with them in the past and continue to do some of that.
And possibly direct mail. Maybe you're actually putting flyers in people's mailboxes. Maybe, there's a whole mix of communications channels, and we, again, don't want to be presumptuous as to we're only going to do, highly technical social media. That doesn't work for everybody. And we understand that the first corner of our strategy prism up there is audience. And your audience may be different types of audiences. So you just mentioned 4 audiences in Douglas County. So there are also other types of audiences too. There are, the elected officials, there are business leaders, and you might need to communicate differently to them than you communicate to the 4 groups that you mentioned too across the county.
And part of it's also driven by the public involvement process. I know that there are strict regulations and guidelines for how you can do public involvement, especially as you're starting a new transit system and your engineering firm probably has already got some of those processes in place. We've worked with Gresham Smith. They've been involved in some of the projects that we've been involved with in the past. But there's a process, and some of those things are mailers that have to go out to people who are living along that bus route. You want fixed bus route service here. Well, there are mailers that are going to have to go to those people who live along that route. And part of that mailer might need to be looked at by us to make sure it's got the right message, that we're sending a consistent message through our telecasts that we're doing, through the newspaper interviews that we're doing, and through those direct mail pieces that are getting handed out to people along the routes.
I don't know if your utilities department allows you to put things in the bills where you could actually have a piece of paper in there that talks about the new bus system by Connect Douglas inside of the water bill, for instance.
And part of it could be where you host your public meetings. It may be great to use a senior center, or go out to the different areas of the county so that it's more convenient for folks.
Town halls, HOA meetings are very, at least personally, what I've seen as being effective ways to touch and feel sometimes you can feel the spirit, the richest exchange is one-on-one. You can't get away from the old school, the human-to-human contact, right, high touch. But we appreciate the high technology, the back to point of scale and getting that information in here, we get it. All right, I got one more question, which is dealing with sort of, it's related. You talked about time frame, 90 days.
Yes.
They're aware of this, 90-day time frame, recognizing it's just where we are. This is our scope of work. We've got to educate our constituents respectively. I think you hit on it. There is residential, which is important, right? But you also have other property owners, such as commercial, that also have very different motives, very different interests. Right? While this is not to persuade, it's important that you educate and educate toward how they hear. Are you able to distinguish the difference, or is it more of just a straight approach? I mean, this is the facts, and I'm sensitive. I don't do what you do, so I'm asking, really. Is it just fact-based? We just get the facts out there, let them come to their own conclusion. I mean, how do you distinguish?
So it all begins with the message, right? I mean, and yes, the message absolutely is based in fact. And we One of our agency, when we started our agency, we wrote some of our guiding principles, and we tell the truth is one of those principles. And we use that in every client interaction, right? So the message is always going to be based in fact, at least when you're working with us. But that message, how it's told, people will receive that message in different ways. And so you need to make sure that your message is crystal clear to the audience that you're giving it to. So the message could tweak a little bit from a consumer message to a business message. Those are different messages, right? It's still very fact-based, but the consumer message is a different message than the business message. So you've got to know your audience and deliver the correct message to that audience.
When we would work with you to identify audiences, then we want to think about, so what is in that business owner's mind? What are their worries, or their motives? So let's think about, let's empathize with their point of view, and then let's come up with a message that is easier for them to understand or to hear or addresses their concerns. So I think, and we would want to do that for, I know that you have senior citizens in your community, you have people with disabilities. We want to think through how each of those audiences, like what are they worried about or what are they excited about? So let's address those things.
5 minutes ahead of time, you have your full time. Respectfully, anybody else want to add or come back? Mr. Walton?
Good.
Okay. Well, to that point, and just maybe this is more just for the road, financial. How do you measure success, right? This has a buzz and everything, right? We're not Coca-Cola. We're not. We're just little Douglas County. We're trying to accomplish something to move ourselves forward, right? So it's a very specific objective, right? So from a financial perspective, how do we measure that? And then why Douglas? You guys have done a lot of stuff. Why Douglas? Why would you take on this assignment? That's a
Very fair question.
So we're passionate about Metro Atlanta. That's part of it. One of the reasons that we founded Jackson Spalding in 1995 is because several of us worked for a large agency that was based out of New York. And we kept having to have people come down from New York and tell us what to do. And we're like, we don't want to do that. We want to do it our own way. We feel like we can do it a better way on our own here in the Metro Atlanta area. So that's why we work for Chick-fil-A and with Coca-Cola and with Primrose Schools that's based up in Cartersville. We work with a lot of local brands. Yes, they may be big brands, but we work with local brands. Some of us, Clint Jackson, born and raised here. Bo Spalding, born and raised here. I'm a 28-year Atlantan. I was telling you that my wife is a multi-generation Georgian, and I found out that Georgia girls don't leave Georgia when I married her. So I've been here for 28 years. So we're very much Atlanta promoters, and that's Metro Atlanta. So an opportunity with Douglas County moves the whole metro region forward, in my view. And we know we just went through this all with Cobb County. We've done this before. So we feel like we can bring our expertise to you and, again, make it a good value because we've done this before. We know how to do this. We have fantastic graphic designers in-house at Jackson Spalding. We have a dozen of them. Roughly a dozen graphic designers. We also have videographers. We also have photographers. We have really capable, competent people who are excellent at what they do that we can bring to bear for Douglas County. And, and as I say, we know how to do it. So we feel like we can get it done quickly and efficiently for you and make it a decent value. So little Douglas County, you guys are not little anymore. You're growing fast like the rest of Metro Atlanta. So if we can help you, we feel like that's a good thing for us. That's a win for us.
I'll add on, we did the logo for Savannah Economic Development Authority. It was back on the logo page, if you want to find it. And we love working on things that do propel, the region, the state forward. We're very interested in economic development. And what was fun about this one is, as you know, they're a port city, and they also do a lot of aviation. They have aviation manufacturing there. So the propeller was kind of part of their two main industries. And so this is a propeller, and then this is like an S. And their tagline, which we didn't include, is propelling business. So we loved, that's just the kind of the way we think about it is, what are we representing? Where are they trying to go? It's very forward looking. And it really expresses what's the kind of underlying sort of fabric of that community. So we just love digging into this stuff, and we have a lot of fun with it. We think it's really interesting, and that's why Douglas County for me anyway.
I'll add one final point on that. I lead business development at JS. That's my role, not my title. And I'm thankful I work at a place where we don't chase the money. We don't want to. We don't want to be the fastest growing. We don't want to be the biggest. We want to be the most trusted and respected. So we are selective in the pursuits that we pursue based on largely, are we inspired by the client and what they're trying to do? And in this one we are. You're trying to solve a major problem in the region by bringing a transportation solution to Douglas County, and also how that's going to incorporate it with the whole metro Atlanta region, as Pat alluded to. And that's inspiring to us because it's a problem that we all deal with, and you are offering a solution to help fix that. And we like that.
And I drive around the metro area a lot, and I really like to see my buses go.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that being said, we don't need to sort of pursue this any further. Any other final questions? We'll just close this out. Thank you all, Director Peacock.
Thank you very much.
Colin, Patrick, and Rachel, we appreciate you being with us today. Very good information, very good presentation. We thank you, and we will be in touch.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thanks all of you too.
I'll show you guys out. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
having us.
Thank you for the great questions.
So nice to meet you. Thank you.
You can just take it if you want.
Okay. You can grab it if you want. Sure.
Yeah, it's the one on the right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks all. You have a great weekend.
Okay. So Gary, on this program, we're designed to continue conversation amongst ourselves, or, right? Is that what you said? No. What did you have planned?
To have a conversation among the community and go ahead and try to come up with a recommendation who would like to work with.
I got it. I'm good. Thank you. Wait for Bill to come back. This is the final, for the record, for the audience, and for the filming, this is going to be the final part of this Transportation Committee meeting. Welcome back. Perfect. Thank you. What we'll do now is take a pause. You guys, not a physical pause, but just sort of a reflection on the three presentations that oral presentations that we just heard regarding this scope of work for our rideshare program, specifically branding and marketing for existing and perhaps future proposed system. You can take it one or two approaches, and I'm going to lead with the first one, which is any open comments. We'll start there, and then we'll come up to a more definitive how do we move forward as far as a recommendation to the full Board of Commissioners. Any comments?
I'll offer a comment. One of the things that I was looking for, and my questioning of the presenters went to try and define this a little better, was how did their overall capability fit into what we're trying to do, or maybe the other way around? Because what our goal is much more limited than their overall capability. They seem to have been able to manage the entire spectrum with larger facilities, systems, and counties. But our effort here is much more limited, and so overall, I did not get as much definition on this specific approach for Douglas as I would have liked. And that's just my perspective.
No, good point, which is why I had the same line of thinking, like, well, do you understand Douglas? One, and our objectives, but two, also emphasize the finance. Like, was it disclosed? I just don't remember. I don't have it in front of me.
Yes.
Yes, it was.
All right, so it was disclosed. So again, back to your point, I think we're on the same page. And again, that's the whole point of this, to try to hear. try to hear it and discern what you need to make your decision and make this work. This scope of work is very tight and has limited budget. It is what it is, and that's what my question was. Well, should you want to go do this? I mean, you guys are big guys and big firms, and they're all capable, but we have a very tight scope of work. And I don't know, I'm gonna pause. I've got some other comments, but.
If you refer back to their written documents, they really tend to address more specifically what it is that they can do in Douglas County. Obviously, they were doing their best to sell us in their scopes and in their abilities to do large things. But in the written documents, they do spend some time to talk specifically about what it is that they believe and their knowledge and understanding of Douglas County. So hopefully, if you know, based on what you've heard today and maybe a little bit of a review of the written documents, you'll be able to focus in on what you're looking for. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in that, you know, my assessment of the three presenters, and I appreciate what Bill just said, because the documents are different from the presentation. But I was, you know, the ratings that we came into this meeting with, to me, didn't play out today. And so I give some, you know, some appreciation to the fact that the written documents vary from presentations today. I thought I just didn't grade them the same as our preliminary gradings worked out in terms of the verbal presentation. So I was a little surprised at that.
Exactly.
Same here.
Same here.
I would agree, which is just a good process that we've instituted here in McGill. I hope you appreciate, you know, how we try to, and again, Mark, you have a lot to do with that. So I'm going to go back to so, you know, I'm oversimplifying, but you had, I think about there's a marketing component, there was a branding component, and there's an educating component, right, in my mind. And to a certain extent, I looked at, I heard each of those firms were a little bit stronger in one area than others, right? It was for me, it was apparent that, for example, the last firm was very good at branding, right? I mean, that's like no brainer. I saw Kimley Corn was probably more broader marketing, you know, just in general planning. I saw Collaborative Firm being more of sort of the education. I mean, based on what they're saying, I can only go on what they said. In other words, you got 30 minutes to convince me of why you right now go, right? So, very different. So, which just comes back to my whole point of weighting. What's important for us in Douglas County as far as what's the weighting? All things being equal, what is the weighting that's important, and how does that weigh in? Or is there a combination here? A combination that says, well, because I like this, you know, it's one of those, you had a perfect person, a perfect whatever, a perfect idea. You're like, okay, I have a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and mesh them together, right? And that's the perfect person, the perfect situation. But these are different firms. Is this a situation where they can be separated or combined as an approach? You know, I mean,
Project is small. It's under $50,000. So if you start trying to separate it or include multiple consultants, it really minimizes their involvement. You know, it brings it down to $25,000 or whatever. So I'm not sure that that's enough. That may not be enough to get them involved the way we want them involved if we try to separate it and split it up between the firms. And we have weighted, in our initial review of the written proposals, we had 5 or 6 categories that we had specific ratings that we had put in points that you could be allocated to each of those things. And it ranged from the development of the educational materials to the project schedules to the staffing, the design, the logos, and things like that. So we could either go back to that weighting of those qualifications, or we could just do a ranking of 1, 2, 3 based on the oral presentations that were given today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think to Commissioner Mulcair's point, round one was round one, and you know, perhaps different weightings might have been applied. So I'm okay with that. I think we got to keep these distinctly different. I guess, and while I hear you, I still listen to what they were pitching. They said they all have worked well together. In our opening comments, there was a suggestion that they're subcontracting amongst themselves. In other words, y'all work it out. I mean, how important is this? I mean, sometimes we have firms that are on standby that are just happy to look, I just want to get in the game. I just want to become a trusted advisor of Douglas County, and we grow from there. I mean, so I'm not trying to design their hand. It's one of those where, look, this is a body of work. You know, if there's an opportunity, I mean, and I saw on the agenda it says to negotiate. I mean, so there's still some, the way you guys presented on the agenda for Monday was that it wasn't coming with a strong, we recommend this. It gave room to sort of like work this out. We're not trying to overkill this, guys. I think, so here's my next question is, who's doing the marketing, the big marketing plan for the county? You know, there's the big master. Who's involved in that? Do you know, Bill? Is it coming out of economic development? There's a firm that's currently in play that's doing.
That's with the economic, they're spearheading that.
Yeah. Who's doing that? Do you know? I just asked.
I don't know.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know. who-
Because here's the question.
Maybe Gresham Smith.
We're doing a branding for the county overall. There's all these people that are involved in it, from, you know, economic development, chamber, school system, all of that. So a citizen called, you know, we all appointed somebody from our respective commission district to be on this committee. So my representative called me, Commissioner Robinson, why isn't transportation involved in, why aren't we addressing transportation as part of this broader branding exercise? Right? So we've sort of got this transportation in its own silo that is not being tied to the bigger picture. Right? You heard the lady say earlier that, you know, hey, we know sometimes they get unaligned or they're not aligned, but yet we had to bring it back on. I forgot who said that. It really didn't matter. My point being is I'm trying to, do we have redundant efforts? Right? So back to, are we already spending money on branding that should already incorporate this, that allows me to use money for something else? Or again, this is time sometimes, well, you know, it gives us a chance to think about this. I don't disagree with you, Bill, that, okay, it's only $50,000. And that's why I was sensitive that you guys know this is only $50,000. This is only $9,000. So I acknowledge that. I'm not discounting it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of, I won't say struggling, that's just too hard a word, but I think we have to determine what our focus is. And to me, branding takes second place to outreach and education and learning. I'm talking about us learning and the community learning. And certainly, I think one of these presenters had made the strongest case there. Branding, I think it's overcomplicated. I may be wrong. I may not know as much as I think I know. But you know, you have kids in high school doing graphic arts, can do branding. But how far does that reach out in all the other materials? It certainly relates to your educational outreach and your learning outreach. But I think it'd behoove us to focus on these presenters and how they can reach out in the community, and probably less so on the branding aspects, because they all do the branding, and if one of them doesn't or doesn't feel confident, they'll call the other consultant on the phone and say, how about handling the branding for us? Because we're going to focus on the community outreach. Community outreach to me is the most important component.
So let me push that then. If we back this up, when this original came to us, almost June, April of last year, when it was first talked about, when we first started, we were going to do a third-party operator, we came up with this little pseudo budget. Branding and marketing was important at that time. We're just going to roll forward. That's when Madam Chair puts a pause and says, well, hold on now. Let me get my mind around what is going on here. So we stood it down. All right, that's when our committee structure was just coming online. As we got into this process and the CMAQ grant was sort of applied and all of that, a derivative of all those conversations was by the ARC, it was suggested that we do public education as a prerequisite. In other words, we were trying to balance, we have an existing ride share that is moving forward, right? That we need to do branding, and it needs to be done on its own. But we had to separate that from a proposed route system and the need of, well, we need to educate the public on that new service, that new functionality, et cetera. So we're trying to balance the two. But the question was, well, do we do the branding and marketing now? Or do we wait until we get the grant to do the formal rollout? And we're trying to, I mean, this is what this really is about, guys. It's like, okay, I get the pre-existing. We may or may not do, listen, I'm just, with the assumption is, do we move forward with the proposed bus route or not? But we still need to do the branding and marketing for the existing system, right? Well, we're down the path of expanding the routes and expanding this system and bringing it online, but we don't have funding for it. So what is the priority? To your point, what is the priority? The priority is that we've got to educate the marketplace, because based on the study that the lady mentioned, we didn't even do a good job of really educating people on our existing services, let alone proposed services. So I'm coming back full circle to your point, that perhaps we picked a firm that is best on engaging the public and educating them on what we do today and what we're proposing to do today as a priority. Branding comes as a secondary. That once we've figured out that objective and they know what we're doing, then we can go blitz. Then we can go high level and do that. But because we only got limited dollars, we've only got a nickel. Back to, we'll talk about that next week. We only have a nickel to work with. So I need to do that for the record, sort of get that little history of sort of how this evolved. The public engagement was a prerequisite. Some of you were in that meeting with the ARC, making sure we do that. This marketing study, transportation services study actually indicated that as well. So if that's our priority, then I agree with you that we picked a firm that best fulfilled that objective first, and that the marketing and the branding is something that's secondary. Not saying that you're right, I can drop somebody a couple grand and they can do me a great graphic. But I mean,
I'm oversimplifying.
I know, but we're agreeing that where are we at right now? Boots in the street, collateral material, that's going to cost money, and that may be the take a lot of the existing budget. But that's for them to figure out, not us. I mean, we give them a bucket of money and do your job. All right, so yeah.
Chairman Robertson, let me offer a comment on that. Actually, I look at this from a slightly different perspective, not disagreeing with what you just described, but I think that initially, at least from historically what I've gathered, the need for the branding arose from the existing services, not any augmented services. So the driver initially was, how can we communicate with the general public the services that we provide now? And therefore, that component of branding has merit in and of itself. As the discussions progressed, it became obvious that enhanced services that are under consideration also require a level of outreach and information dissemination. So I'm not as leaning in one direction or the other. I think both components are going to be critical to the success of the overall, because essentially, if we're able to get information out to the general public about the existing services, that will really inform what future services may be necessary, may be desirable. Right now, you have a population that doesn't necessarily know that we can provide transportation for somebody to come to a senior center for what have you. So, as much as there is a more current, urgent need for public outreach, there is this ongoing existing service driver for a more cohesive branding component. So my perspective is not as unbalanced, perhaps not as much leaning towards one side versus the other. I think both need to be part of the equation.
Yes. It sounds like we agree and disagree at the same time. I like to how we talk. We're always agreeing, but I'm not negating the issue of the branding. We've got a package right here that's gonna require branding. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, based on what we heard today, who's gonna deliver the educational component along with the branding? So I'm not talking about negating the branding issue. It's a total package, because that's what we require of these folks. So I've got my ranking, and it varies a little bit from this.
And again, in that, this is the sensitive why we're having a conversation, because at the end of the day, there's the technical part of this, but also there's a community, there's a citizen part, which we have a slightly different sensitivity to, which is, while staff has done a great job of delivering services, our communication of those services have not been fulfilled. We typically get the hit for that communication, that we don't know what's going on, and so we're trying to balance. And I hear, Commissioner, it's not either or. You hear me say that often. It's both. But I want to make sure that, but what is our priority of the moment? And the priority shift based on the immediacy of the moment. Let's do this, and we've got about 10 minutes. We can sort of bring this sort of to a conclusion. And I like Director Watson's suggestion. As far as, do we have a recommendation for, and we're not tallying at this moment. This is more of a, do we have in our own minds who we think can fulfill the essence of the scope of work?
I think yes.
Each firm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay. You're good. No, that's right. Eyes good. Bill, I know you're just facilitating. Miguel?
I do, but I have two firms who, depending on what we emphasize more, I would go one way or the other. So if public outreach is the main goal, then I know who that firm would be. If it would be sort of equal weight of branding component and outreach, then that would be a different firm.
I think where we are now, the outreach educational component is by far the most important. We can be working on the branding, and you heard this last group say that it took them, 18 months to work through the Cobb graphics. So I don't think it'll take us that long. I agree with Commissioner Mulcair that we kind of overthink that to some degree, but certainly I do think we need to get started on the educational outreach component.
All right, so Bill, how can we facilitate? Y'all want to just say the top two that we have in mind and reconcile that, or just a single one, call it and leave it?
Not to conceal anything, I mean, I'd be glad to give a tacky note to the chair, and you could announce the tally. I mean, that's one option we've used in other committees. Not keep anything secret, we can read them, but it's a way to be accurate, is what I'm saying.
If you want to provide me with your ranking of the three based on the last comment from Mr. Watson, that he believes that the outreach is the most urgent need, if you will provide me your rankings from 1, 2, and 3, one being your top choice, I'll tally those and I'll provide to you the top. And there's some sticky notes.
Okay with you, Mr.
Yeah, I'm slightly different. I just want the top two. Top two. just the top two. Top two. And given the, there's some stickies here. Top two. Somewhere. You got them?
By your telephone.
Thank you, my friend. We can discuss them.
first choice by the committee with 3 votes is the collaborative group. And Kimberly Horn would come in second with 2 votes. So the collaborative group got 3 votes and Kimberly Horn got 2 votes as the number 1 pick. In second place.
No, you did. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. In second place, Kimberly Horn would have come in second with 3 votes. The collateral group got 1 vote, and Spalding got 1 vote. But the committee's preference seems to be, with the vote of 3-2, to go with the collaborative group.
As a process. So our goal, I'm just coming back, thank you for that, I just want to, so conclusion of this meeting is to have this special call transportation committee meeting was to make a recommendation to the full board of commissioners. And is it accurate that there is a line item on, maybe this is the county administrator,
Yes.
there's a line
Yes,
item that
sir.
says that there is a, to negotiate and authorize the chairman to sign whatever contract for this body of work. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. Currently, there is a blank for the company's name, just to let everybody know that we don't already have someone picked, but yeah, there's a blank to fill in.
Okay.
Based on a recommendation.
Okay, so then let's keep this simple. Can I, I'll call the question for a recommendation to go with the collaborative group as the preferred, or I'm willing to work with some other type of condition, but I'll start there as a recommendation to the full board of commissioners.
I'll make that motion. Actually, what the agenda item reads is, it's a recommendation to go to negotiate with the company up to $50,000.
That's it, that's fine, it's got a cap not to exceed, that's fine. So on the floor right now, we have a recommendation to the full board of commissioners as the collaborative group or firm, what's it called?
Firm.
The collaborative firm as the preferred consultant of record. I have a second. Okay. Any discussion? None? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So be it. That being said, this will be the conclusion of this special call transportation committee meeting. Gentlemen, thank you all for coming out and participating in this. We only had 1 agenda item. This meeting stands adjourned.